Right, welcome back, everyone. As I predicted at the beginning of the passionate discussion has already taken place and some difficult decisions. So with that in mind, we continue on with our resolutions for the long-term plan deliberations. We are moving to resolution 4. So I'll be inviting debate on the resolution to include the request from Martin Borough Community Board to fix the small children's area at the Waihinga Playground, which is to be funded from the Waihinga Reserve up to the balance of the reserve. So this has no impact on rates. Yeah. No, because the money is sitting in reserve already and is an item that comes directly from the community board with input from their community. Councillor Movement.
I'll move that.
Yeah.
Grew up running around there.
Councillor
Many
Movement.
times we got nearly run over.
As a seconder, all those in favour, please say aye.
Hey.
Those against, no. Motion is speedily carried. We're moving to item 5. Resolved to include the Featherston Green Space as requested by the Featherston Community Board. Thank you, Councillor Oles. Thank you, Councillor Gray. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. Motion is carried. And the next and probably last one at this speed is number 6. Resolved to direct council officers to extend the Arbour Reserve in Greytown as requested by the Greytown Community Board and delegate beautification to the Greytown Community Board. And for clarification to anyone watching online, the beautification work is likely needing to be fundraised, and that sits with the Community Board. Councillor Oles to move, Councillor Maynard with your speedy finger to second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. That motion is also carried.
I just think it's great that our 3 community boards have got specific projects
Yes,
brought up to the
exactly.
table to move forward in this LTP process. Totally agree. It's great to see.
Green spaces.
And say how well they've done to identify a project that is meaningful to their community and has that community support, and for the most part has a very low impact on the overall
Yep.
as well. So
Thank you.
well done to all involved. Now moving on to the item on consultation. So then consultation questions. It's resolution 7, and we will move to resolve to adopt the following options from the 2025-34 long-term plan consultation. And I believe that these will take a bit more debate than the previous 3 resolutions. So number 7A, question 1. Should we adjust the level of uniform charge from 21% to 28%? So I believe from the consultation, the option is the preferred option was moved to 28, and the alternate option is a remain at 21. And because we consulted on one or the other, we don't have the latitude to do a variation of.
I move that we retain the uniform charge at 21%.
Second that. That's it.
So,
That's an alternative motion.
sorry.
Well, no, because this was.
And would you like?
It is. So you're moving the motion to adjust the level of uniform charge from 21 to 28.
No, I was moving.
You moved an alternate motion, but you can't have a direct negative, and what you proposed is a direct negative of what's on the table. It's the complete opposite. So you have to put this, and it fails if people don't want it to move to 28. Is why.
That's not the recommendation I'm looking at. I'm looking at a question.
Yeah, it does say, should we adjust? Question 1, should we adjust the level of uniform charges from 21 to 28? And then
So that's not a motion.
Say yes or no.
Can we just let
Yeah, sorry.
answer the
I'm thinking to please, councillor to.
okay.
Okay, well, I was wanting to put a question to the chief executive, because I thought, quite honestly, in the consultation, this caused a lot of confusion. And I just wonder if a chief executive could explain, because I think the recommendation was because of some really extreme examples of it being at 1%. Am I right there? Oh, whatever.
Charlie?
So because the feedback was so even.
Yeah, it's literally.
I did a little bit more work on this yesterday to give you a little bit more data, because I love data, to help you make this decision. Through your chair, can I distribute that around the table? Okay. So these are some examples of properties under both options. And then on the smaller table side, so that table side there breaks down the district and the average CV by category, the number of properties in those categories, what's the number of properties that would be better off under 21%, the number of properties that would be better off under 28%, and the average rate under each of those, just to help you with your decision. I am not swaying you either way.
Better off means cheaper.
So cheaper, yes, they'd be paying less
Yeah,
rates
yeah.
under.
120 against 43
Yes.
on commercial, industrial, lifestyle. That's 32 against 705.
Oh my gosh.
Their residential, 3,940 against 750. Clear, isn't it?
This is just what I wanted, because I know
I thought that was what you would want.
it wasn't the obvious. We wanted to make for people with look pretty, but that's what happened.
Does anyone have any questions about the material?
This is very.
No, this is a great, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It just reinforces thinking.
Just get clarification while you've all been at the fabulous document that Charlie has given you.
Yeah.
And because of the way the resolutions are worded and the way they reflect the consultation document wording, the mayor earlier moved a motion, and he is able to just move that as option 2. Because that was 25%, so, and that's.
So, sorry, just from some clarification here, should we adjust the level of uniform charge from 21 to 28?
That was the question.
Option 1 would be no.
Option 1 in the consultation document was yes, that was the preferred.
Who's the man?
And option 2 was to stay at 21%. The mayor is proposing that we will move option 2, remain at 21%.
Aye.
Oh,
I see that.
You've had a mover and a second
Had a move in the second.
and a third.
Sorry, the mayor moved it, Councillor Maynard, you seconded that. Any further discussion?
yes, please, Scott, I just, so sorry, Charlie, now I'm funny, this is quite an executive summary, to the back page. So if there was a, go back to what we were trying to look at, that 2 properties, and more expensive property and a cheaper property on the same value land, still which way would the cheaper property come out better?
We rate on CV, the land value portion of it is irrelevant.
Yes.
The lower value properties will come out better under 21%.
51%.
The higher value properties under 28%. The further away you are from the average value property, which if you look at the bottom, the core key average of the district is just over $1 million. But more or less you're impacted by those the changes.
But didn't it work out under the 28%? Some higher value properties became absolutely unreasonable. Wasn't that?
No, it's the other way around.
Oh, so that's right. So 25% penalises the expense of
cat food.
more than one would think they should be. Yes, yes, yes.
So, but out of the district as a whole, 5,119 properties are better off, are paying less rates under a 21%.
Yeah.
As a natural offset to that, if you choose 21%, then 2,291 properties are paying more under 21%, which is the motion on the table.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very useful.
Councillor Elams.
Chair, I've reviewing everything and seeing those figures that, we had less than 200 submissions on our LTP, and it was, even split 92 either way for 28%, 21%. Considering we've got over 7,000 rateable properties, there's no way enough feedback to us to change our decision from where we are at the moment, in my view.
Any other comment before we move to vote? No, so the motion is for question 1 is that we resolve to accept option 2 and remain at 21% for the uniform charge for 2020.
Going forward.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No.
The motion is carried. Thank you very much. 7B, the question that we consulted on was, should people who live closer to our towns contribute a higher share of funding the service and facilities in town? Any discussion on this?
I'd just like to say, I support this, but the community doesn't. And, so I think this question was probably a little bit confusing out there. And that's why it hasn't got across the line. I think most people would, if it was explained in a particularly better way, I think it probably would have got across the line, but I'm going to go with what the community would like.
So you're moving option 2?
Option
Continue.
stay as it is.
Yes.
Continue.
And I tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
It was, the intent was there to change things in a way that we had heard would be beneficial, but it's a very big concept to try and convey in just a few pages of text. And so, as you say, a bit confusing to get your head around. Any other comment or a seconder for Councillor Plymouth?
I'm happy to second it, you.
In which case, I'm looking for all those in favour of maintaining our current rating model. Moving forward, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The motion is carried. Question 3 was, how should we define separately used and inhabitable parts or SUIPs?
Behind you, can we just keep that? Sorry.
Option 1 was the new and improved, in my mind, definition, and option 2 was the one that we already had, which was causing some confusion.
Those are net people.
Option 1 was very favoured.
Yeah.
Yes. Councillor Plymouth, Councillor Macaulay, moving and seconding. Any discussion? No, those in favour, please say aye.
Can I just say, Charlie and your team, well done on that, because it was a particularly confusing one the year before. And I think you did great work on it.
Yes, it was a brilliant.
The workshop that Janice did was particularly.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Any against? No, the motion is carried. Question 4 was, should we change the refuse and recycling charge back to per rating unit instead of per separately used inhabitable part of a property?
Yes.
So the option 1 was to charge by rating unit.
That's option 1.
and the alternate was pursuant. The feedback that we had prior to consultation, people wanted to move to a rating unit and it was supported through consultation.
Absolutely.
So sorry, councillor Plummer is moving, councillor Gray is seconding option 1. All those in favour of charging the refuse and recycling charge for the rating unit, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, say no. Motion is carried. Question 5, how much should we spend on operating and maintaining our water network? This was just going along way too easy. Yes, so we had 3 options in this question. Option 1 was the slight increase to adjust for inflation. Option 2 was option 1 plus a $500,000 contestable emergency fund held by council. And option 3 is $1 million. It's on option 1. We thought for that was that would enable an increase in planning and resilience. And option 4 was a marked jump. That really had that full focus on planning and resilience.
Move option 1.
Move option 1. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Do we have any discussion? Because it was very quick to move to option 1. Any discussion on the matter before we go to the vote?
I know that option 1 is the one that we have had included in the numbers and with the, the projections for the percentage. I don't think it's a responsible position for us to be taking. And I know that it's a really difficult place for us to be in with a lot of things in flux from a legislation point of view and from a service point of view and providers and everything. But I just don't think that option 1 is the responsible way to go. I wish we were in a position where we could increase it a lot more. I think that I hope that in the future, whatever entity ends up standing up is able to do a better job of maintaining and operating the network than we've been able to. But I would propose option 2 at a minimum over option 1.
I would second that. Yeah, third that.
Councillor Evans.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just ask Charlie, what would the impact be with option 2, an extra 500k?
Yes.
So if we went with option 2, you'd be looking at 6.4%, and that includes your decision to add 80k to the.
But it's also misleading, of course, because it does not affect
everyone in different ways. Roughly between 4,500 and 5,000, depending on which water you're talking about, is the number of ratepayers who would be paying that 500,000.
And historically, we've got to where we are with having such a rundown network that we're struggling to keep up with because successive councils have felt uncomfortable with rates rises, and we've had to sit here and talk about, numbers in the 20s to just catch up. And, now we're down at these very low single digits, which is really nice to be able to, I think, float in front of a bunch of other councils when they go out with their awful numbers, and ours will still look great.
What is it?
But for us to be thinking that number is the main reason why we make the decisions that we make, it's a part of it, but it's not all of it. It shouldn't be the only thing that we're thinking about is what is a popular number.
What's the actual dollar figure?
Sorry, just to also point out that if you had multiple SERPs, you're multiply impacted on any increased budget. Let's have a look.
Just a reminder that, again, for anybody watching or listening, that this is our operations budget. This isn't anything to do with our capital
CapEx.
budget, which looks at improvements. This is just for running what we have.
You'd be looking at about $100 per SERP extra for the option 2.
Councillor Elams and then Councillor Olds.
So can we define, a contestable emergency fund? And what that 500K would be used for? Because, it was not last year in the AP, but the previous year, we went to was it an emergency for infrastructure fund? So what will the differences be between what we already have and a $500,000 contestable emergency fund for water services?
And can you stretch that out to what would be the difference of not having that and having an emergency that required extra funding to come back to this table to have that option?
Sorry.
CapEx for-
Yeah.
One's OpEx and one's CapEx for a start. So the Infrastructure Resilience Fund was set up more in mind of weather events and replacing pipe that was lost in some kind of event or roading. It wasn't pegged to one particular activity, it was for infrastructure. So that was the intent of that fund being set up. Whereas a contingency on your operating budget allows for repairs and maintenance along the lines of what was the leak that we had. That was partially funded by underspend from the previous year, actually. So that would be the intent of the 500,000 operating contingency.
And the difference between having a set contingency, like set aside, and having to come to the table and say, we need 200,000
Cash
So the
available.
chair, it's a straight issue that if you include it, you've rated for it.
Mhm.
Therefore, we're collecting the rates for it. If something occurs and we come back to the table and you approve additional operational funds, we don't have that rate income to support it. We would have to be looking for savings elsewhere to balance the ups and downs, which is generally where we've been in the past.
In previous years, we have not had a contingency and plundered the depreciation reserve for that, to the point where we no longer have a depreciation reserve.
I'm personally reluctant to move anywhere from option one, not based on, excuse me, not based on, directly the impact on rates, but more, when I consider our current provider. As you mentioned before, we paid for the Greater Lake out of underspend. You only get underspend if underwork is happening, and I'm simply not convinced that regardless of where we raise our investment to, that our current provider would in fact be able to do the amount of work to spend that amount of money. And certainly given recent, I'm just not convinced that increase in would make a factor. So I'll go Councillor Old.
Yeah, no, thanks, Madam Chair, because I share your sentiments in terms of our current provider of these services and the fact that their ability to be able to deliver at the end of the day has been somewhat tested over time. But I'm also of mind that we are moving towards a new transitional phase of local water done well, and no matter what the outcome of the other three councils are, ultimately at the end of the day we have to move into something which is not which is totally different than the way that we deliver those services or have those services delivered to our community now. So I think to stay on track effectively, the 5.05, 6.05 is maintaining what we currently have. And I think that's what we should be focused on at the moment. We don't want an entity to pick up a trash system. They're already doing that, but we don't want the entity to pick up a worse than it is today system. So I think the reality is that what we've set aside now for that is probably the better approach, because 18 months, 2 years down the track, we've got a whole new ball game.
I was just listening.
Yes, I think Councillor Oldju stole a lot of the words out of my mouth. But I think that's true, but also I think too, I mean, the consultation was very strongly in favour of this too. So I think we'd have to have quite a strong argument to go against that as well.
More people voted to increase again.
Okay. Oh, I guess I'm good. Okay.
Behind, but the one strongest.
Yeah.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So I would go with option one. Yeah.
The debate. on
Yeah, I'll just make a comment, and I made a comment about this when we were talking about this, that, so Colin, look, I agree with you, there's the maintaining of the existing, which is the 6.05, that's maintaining, correct. The 0.5 we're asking for extra that we three have, is for emergencies, and every single year in the last 6 years, we've had to find money for an emergency.
Not every year.
Yeah, every year.
No.
Every year I've been here with meeting to transfer money from one area to another every year.
There's been some very valid reasons for that, and some have been fundamental areas.
Emergencies. They are all emergencies, and I guarantee you, in the next 12 months, we'll have another emergency.
Then we'll deal with it when it happens.
That's all very well to say we'll deal with it when it happens, but if we spend the money, the 6.5, which when the chief executive and the board chair were here, said, yes.
Just disagreeing with you, obviously, that's all, and I'm allowed to do that.
That's your comment. You know, we were given an undertaking by the board chair, by the CE, that they will spend the money maintaining our systems. They can't determine whether we're going to have another emergency. And as I said, we have had an emergency and had to have a special meeting of council to rearrange money every year I've been on council. So all we're saying is let's be smart and put that money aside.
Yeah, the sewage ponds are still.
Yeah, no, part of that, Connolly and Councillor Leland and Councillor Maitland, thank you. So we'll put it to the vote. If option one does not get the majority, then we'll come back and alternate. So at the moment, the question is how much should we spend on operating and maintaining our water network? The Mayor and Councillor Olds have moved that should be option one. 6,006,005, a slight increase to add inflation to the future funding, providing a minimal viable option for the delivery of service. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Leave your hands up, please. So that's all except Bosley Green. Yeah. All those against, no. The motion is 1. Question 6, how much of the roading improvements program should we fund? Now, the options for this one were to fund the shortfall, so fund 100% of the roading improvements program with additional measure spent. So this one was picking up the shortfall of the NZTA funding.
That was the favoured option, wasn't it?
That was the option we
Yeah.
worked best. Get majority favour consultation. Option 2 was to fund 49% of the roading improvements. Now, since this,
That's option 1.
thank you, since this has been done, Tim has secured funding.
So, yeah, through your chair, since consultations, Tim has successfully had approved $1.1 million additional subsidy. So that's the income side of things against a 2.4, I think it was, spend. That is spread over the 3 year of the program. Yeah, so the this month and the next 2 years.
Doesn't change the budget. Asking to fund the difference.
Yes, exactly. So you're still funding the difference. The difference is slightly less than it was. And reminder that the difference borrowed for, and therefore the operating impact on rates is the interest on the borrowing.
From the year.
Fortunately less now.
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Fleming. You
No, second
option 1
Yes.
to fund the full amount. Councillor Olds,
Yep.
you have seconded that.
Yeah, I have.
That is currently already factored into.
Yeah, rates.
Change, yeah.
Figures. Any further conversation?
Charlie, would that be $80,000 or more, do you think? Because it could actually fund the.
So that has, I've already done that in the, that you've lost that.
Jump in.
Yeah, so that has already been factored into the 4.7, 25-26, and it's actually reduced the 26-27 increase.
Oh, great.
So all those in favour of funding the full roading improvement program, please say aye.
I,
All those against,
So no,
no.
you don't like roads, do you?
Right.
We better put it
What if we
into
put
water.
troughs halfway along for the horses?
That could be good.
and the drains on the side of the road.
Moved
Everywhere.
this morning is item number 8. That's to note that the council meeting is scheduled for 25 June 2025 to adopt the 2025-34 long-term plan and set the budget for 2025-26. And again, for the benefit of anyone who's watching, what we've done today is make all the final decisions based on consultation and deliberation and extras, which will now be fed to our officers to finalise all the documentation for the long-term plan, which will come back on 25th of June for final approval. That's the many step process of the deal with you.
Apologies, I wasn't here for the local waters done well discussions and deliberations. And I know that they'll be coming through to see as well. But I just want to congratulate your team on the work that you've done so far. I think you've done a great job, but I just want to clarify as well that the auditors adverse with our consultation document, now that we have, because that was due to where we were sitting with local waters done well. Now that work has been done, my understanding is that the adverse, right, regarding local waters done well should be able to be looked at again by them.
Through the chair, there is an audit opinion on the long-term plan itself. That's the next step in the process. So having got that decision last week to move forward with a multi-council CCO from 2027, Charlie is now removing waters from 2027. And we will put that back to the auditors when they're here in 3 weeks' time, 2 weeks' time. And they will audit the whole document as the LTP then. So they're only looking for auditing the changes that have occurred from the original audit to now. So fingers crossed that will come through as a clear.
I just remember that the adverse came from the local waters not being able to remove it. Well, because we wanted to show that be very clear on what it could look like, depending on what we heard back and the feedback that we heard back from our ratepayers. And that's why, we went ahead with it, because they felt they could not make a definitive, and that's why it had to be adverse. So I feel like we're actually in quite a good position now with the auditors to be able to show that we have gone right wrong.
Jinx.
Yep, so the adverse opinion on the consultation document was around financial sustainability, going beyond into the out years of the long-term plan. And that should no longer be a problem, and we should be able to satisfy audits that we now are financially sustainable. And yes, we are hoping for a clean audit.
Thank you. I do just need, it is a note and recommendation, so do need a vote.
Yep.
So I'm looking for I'll move it. Note that a council meeting is scheduled for 25 June to adopt the 2025-34 long-term plan and set the budget. I'm looking for a seconder for that, please. Thanks, Councillor Gray. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. Motion is carried. A closing karakia seems particularly important today to be able to, and we've got some answers for previously asked question that was for, so we'll discuss it later. So please stand for the closing karakia.
Thank
you, everyone. Here is lunch.